Alright guys, this is Austin with Hardware Elitist. I'm up late, so I figured I'd do a last minute unboxing of the H115i. As I just got it, it's going to go in my new build, but I wanted to go ahead and do a quick run through on it so you guys can see what's included and what you can expect from it. You'll notice that they've gone and rebranded. They're no longer doing the GTX line or the GX line or whatever lines they were doing because they got confusing and people just couldn't figure it out. So we're back to the 110, the 110i, or the 100i, the 110, the 115i, and all the I stands for is that it comes with Corsair Link, which is their proprietary software, and you may or may not find that useful. But we get it open. It opens like every other Corsair box. Got a bunch of foam. Immediately we have our fans, and these are the SP140L fans, designed for a lot of static pressure so that you can push through the radiator effectively. New fan blade design from what I saw in the H100i, or at least the GTX version, as that's the last one that I had, so good looking fans. This is your second fan. We'll go ahead and just put that to the side though. It's the exact same as the first. This is going to be all your mounting hardware, whether you're using Intel or AMD sockets. For a full list of compatibility, you'll want to check out Corsair's website. They have everything they use. We'll go ahead and open this up for a minute and go through a couple of the different things. This is going to be your USB 2.0 motherboard header to USB standard connector, and that's going to hook directly into the unit itself next to the processor, and then to your motherboard to control it through Corsair Link. We have more mounting hardware options, and you don't want to lose any of this, especially if you're going to change processor types, because I know that depending on the generation, different screws are needed, so try and keep a hold of that bag. Getting to the unit itself, we'll get this out and get the box out of the way. Go ahead and pull this section out. Before that though, as always, you have your warranty guide, tells you what you're covered with and what you're not. We have the manual itself with quick start options. You're definitely going to read this because depending on the type of processor you have, it tells you exactly how to install it. And then your warranty card, make sure you hold on to that and get it filled out. So with this box out of the way. Going back to the H115i itself, we're going to get it pulled out so we can show you a couple different things. I like to get that portion out first just so it's out of the way. When you pick this up, again, you're going to want to be very, very careful so that you don't bend any of the radiator fins. I'm a little OCD with mine, and it bothers me immensely when I go and bend any of the fins. So, get that out of the way. Go ahead and lay that down. Taking these bags off, we can actually get a look at the design itself. We do have the Corsair logo right here. It is non-illuminated. Whereas, if we go further down on the heatsink itself, let's get the bag off. Go ahead and move this around for you. We've got the heatsink itself, and from what I've been reading, the included thermal paste is actually a pretty decent brand, so you may want to leave it on, may not, depends on if you have anything that you prefer. If we can get a good angle on this, I don't know how I possibly can. But looking at the heatsink, we see that there is another Corsair logo. This one is illuminated with RGB through the Corsair Link software. Definitely a nifty thing. Looking at the connectors coming off the heatsink, we have our power, so we're using SATA power, and then we have the leads to connect the fans, as well as fan control, and which will need to be hooked to a fan header, the CPU fan header on your motherboard, so keep that in mind. Looking at this, the radiator tubes, or tubing, or whatever you want to call it, it does have a nice sleeve on it, almost a reflective look to it. I don't know how well that's going to match my other sleeving, but We'll see, hopefully it works out. Taking a closer look at the radiator, here we have the reservoir at the very bottom, which I believe the pump is also located inside. A very small reservoir, but again it's an all-in-one. Pretty good looking fins. I'm not seeing too many imperfections. I mean, as always, you're going to experience a few just because they're not always perfect when they come out of the factory. This is the 280mm version, meaning that it will use two 140mm fans. A lot of you will probably notice that the 240 versus the 280 doesn't really make too much of a difference. It's just really what your case can accommodate. Because price-wise, there really isn't that much of a difference. If anything, it's been about $10 more to go with the 280mm, and you're only going to see maybe a few degrees Celsius difference, if that. And the same can be said about the 360mm setups as well. However, you would see a higher performance if you went, instead of going with an all-in-one, if you went with a custom loop solution. But if you've ever looked at the prices of those, you'll know that that's not always realistic. So again, missed this the first time. This is the place where you're going to connect it, where you will have that line for Corsair link that'll go from here to a USB 2.0 header on your motherboard. Make sure that you do have one available before you buy this, because this really kind of becomes a paperweight if you're not using that, or if you can at least plug it in one time, because at the very least it will need to be plugged in once to set the settings and to set your lights and to do whatever you want. Then you can unplug it and go back to using the port for whatever else you want. If I'm not mistaken, you can also remove this gray piece right here, and it can be replaced with a color of your choice, and I believe they have blue and red as well, and I have seen some that are white, but I believe that was custom, so you may want to look into that. So, setting that aside, if we take a closer look at our bag of hardware, again, you'll also want to make sure that you are using the washers. In my personal experience, I don't know why, but I neglected to use them on an H80 and actually managed to do quite a bit of damage to the paint on the radiator itself, and that bothered me a lot. I don't know if you guys would be super crazy about it, but I know that I am. So again, use the washers, smooth side against the finish, rough side against the top of the screw. And that should be it. That sums up our coverage of the H115i. It's not too much different than what you'd expect with any of the other Corsair all-in-one coolers, if you're familiar with them. If not, let me be the first to tell you that I've immensely enjoyed them. I've owned 3 of them so far, and I did end up RMAing one because the pump was a little loud, but I actually learned that if you let the pump work, it's almost as if it has a burn-in period, and it will become quieter over time. But it is still noticeable if you have if you have your case on top of your desk, which my new one is going to be, so we'll see how I get used to that. But aside from that, I've been really happy with this product line. I haven't had any problems besides that one RMA, and Corsair immediately worked with me, and it was no hassle. The only downside is it does take time for shipping. So that aside, I believe that wraps it up for this. So if you like this video, comment. If not, also comment. It's always nice to know what we can do different, what we can do better, and how to make better videos in the future. So subscribe if you want to see more.